What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades, and today we're talking about another fine product from Petrified Fish. What we've got here is the PF838 from Petrified Fish. This is a flipper folder on a bearing pivot. It is one of Petrified Fish's offerings from the lower end of their price range, and you should be able to find this exact knife or one of its iterations for between $30 and $35 online from any Petrified Fish dealer. You can try out Justin over at White Mountain Knives. You can try Amazon and wherever else carries Petrified Fish. They will typically have this model. So, let's see, what are we going to talk about first on this thing? Let's knock out the packaging on this Petrified Fish PF838 flipper folder. This one in the black G10 with carbon fiber inlay. The other two models of this have G10 inlays. There's a tan and an OD green, both of them inlaid into black G10, and the price range between all these different models is minuscule. You should be able to get any of them for $30 to $35. So let's set that aside. We're going to take a look at the box here. There is no real markings on the box or anything. It's a very base model Petrified Fish slide-in box. Let's see what we've got in here. There will be a Petrified Fish branded microfiber cleaning cloth, and the knife comes in a small Ziploc bag, and we are done with the packaging. Not the most interesting part of the review. Let's get back to the knife itself, and we're going to knock out some dimensions here. This is a full-size flipper folder. You're looking at 3 5/8 of an inch for your blade length, and that's 9.5 centimeters. Blade width at the widest, 1.1 inches or 30 millimeters. Blade stock thickness, 158 thousandths of an inch or 4 millimeters. Your handle length, 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters. Your handle width at the widest, 1.28 inches or 33 millimeters, and that is up here at the pivot end. The handle thickness, it's a heavy duty little girl right here, guys. It's 653 thousandths of an inch or 16.5 millimeters on this fully machined and sculpted G10 handle. Your overall length, 8 3/4 of an inch or 22 centimeters. Stop pin diameter, 116 thousandths of an inch or 3 millimeters. Behind the edge thickness, nice and thin and slicey on this flat grind. We're looking at about 15 thousandths of an inch or 0.38 millimeters. Your handle to blade ratio, 72%, and your weight, kind of a chunky 5.82 ounces or 165 grams. This one is not an ultralight carry for you guys that like the lighter stuff. And it feels substantial in the hand. Now, it doesn't feel like super duper heavy. I think if you're crying that 5.8 ounces is super duper heavy, you probably need to get into the gym and eat a little better, and my God, try to get out and have some sex every once in a while to strengthen yourself. But you lightweight carry guys, I know you don't like anything that is heavier than a feather with an edge on it. This one is probably not going to be for you. Let's talk about materials. D2 tool steel for your blade steel. We all know about D2. It has become the sort of darling child performance steel in this quote-unquote budget realm. The under sort of $75-ish price range. You're going to see D2 used extensively by all of these companies. Petrified Fish uses it across their product line depending on price point. And I think for $30, this is a hell of a lot of knife for $30. even in D2, which people have a tendency to sort of boo-hoo D2. It's a pretty decent tool still. It's semi-stainless. Just missing the stainless designation by about 1.5% of chromium content. Pretty easy to take care of. Takes a nice toothy edge. The initial edge lasts a decent amount of time, and it leaves behind a carbide-packed, very toothy sort of micro saw edge that will last a decent amount of time. I actually like D2 fairly well. It can be a little bit of a bear if you let it get really dull and you totally blow the apex off of that edge. Once it gets rounded over, you have to reestablish that apex. It's pretty doggone wear resistant, and wear resistant also to your sharpening stones. So it's best to sort of maintain D2. You want to take a look at it, make sure you're keeping it coated in something that'll keep corrosion chances down, especially if you're around water or salty water, humid area. Beyond that, D2 is D2, guys. I mean, I can't say a whole lot about it that I haven't already said in 100 other videos. Material-wise, on your handle, again, this is in sculpted G10. You're going to have various inlays. This is the carbon fiber. There are also a couple of different colors of G10 inlays, all around the same price point. There's not enough of a spread in the price point, as far as I'm concerned, to not get the carbon fiber unless you just want a pop of color here in a brown or an OD green G10 inlay. G10 here, stainless small parts, T6 for all your small screws, T8 on your pivot. You do have a stainless steel deep carry pocket clip that is very well designed. You do see it is recessed in the pocket, but it does not have flat head screws. It does have dome head screws. So you guys that don't like that are not going to like that. It is a stainless steel liner lock. The liners are weight relieved on the show side only, and you are seeing the weight of this knife. It is thick G10 slabs, so they can do all this 3D machining on it. The liners are nice and thick with sort of minimal weight relief on them. You can see it here in the circle cutouts. That's why you're getting up close to 6 ounces for this nearly 9-inch knife. It is a bearing pivot build, ceramic bearing, single row on the pivot and ceramic on the detent. And it feels like it, guys. It's very, very smooth. You can get a lot of knife here for $30. And this is carrying on with everything that I've seen from Petrified Fish has been, regardless of price point, extremely high quality. So let's talk about fit and finish. This knife actually has a super duper attractive finish on this blade. This black wash finish, I really, really like that. They have tumbled this back where you get a lot of dynamics from this black wash. It's not just a solid black. You can see here it is very much a sort of a dynamic surface finish. Look at these grinds. Look at how crisp the junctures of these grinds are. Say from this swedge grind to the primary grind. Look at how crisp this line is. Crisp the plunge lines are, both for the primary and the swedge on this. You've got some nice little itty bitty baby patch of jimping that I honestly, why even bother to do the machining there to put that there? It's not, I mean, the jimping itself is good, but it is such a small area of jimping. This is about 1/4 of an inch total in length, this flat area here. I probably wouldn't even have bothered with that. You get plenty of purchase from the handle design. Very minimal markings on this. You can see on the front it is marked D2. On the back it is marked 838. That is the only markings on this. You can also see this is one of those knife designs where open you will be able to see the detent ball track. So if you do not like that, if you don't like seeing that detent ball track, you probably will not like this, although, you know, it's not really super exposed there, but you can readily see it because of that black wash finish. You see where that ceramic detent ball is wearing through that finish and just leaving the silver of the blade steel itself. So fit and finish on the blade for what it is absolutely perfect. Petrified Fish is super crisp on their blade grinds from everything that I've seen. Look at this secondary grind, this edge bevel. See how tight that is from tip to termination? That is very good. And this really high sort of slicer grind. I identify this as a slicer grind. You see this grind rises as it moves towards the tip. And that's a lot like that sort of Hinderer-esque zero tolerance sort of rising slicer grind there. I like that very much. And it gives you a very thin behind the edge blade thickness. I mean, behind the edge, that is. That's got crap all over it while I was opening some boxes with it. So, you know, fit and finish on the blade is pretty perfect there. It is nice and sharp and pointy and pokey and stabby and piercy on the tip here. Yes, sir, it is. And again, that edge is very well done. Let's go into the fit and finish on the handle. Let's look at this machining on this G10. It is super smooth. It gives a nice, smooth surface finish on it and surface feel across all the planes of this machine, and it's well fit to the liners. These are exposed liners. They are not recessed liners. And I want to say something about the fitment of this insert. It's absolutely, okay, listen to what I'm saying. It's absolutely nail catch free. It is absolutely flush, as this feels like one continuous surface, with the only difference in feel being just the surface feel of the different materials. So what that tells me is this G10 was machined. We've got this machined insert. It is put in probably using a black epoxy. Okay, when you use a black epoxy between this black gray sort of carbon fiber and the standard black G10, it just disappears. You cannot tell there's anything there. And the epoxy that you use to glue an insert like this in, it fills that gap, and once it's machined down, it's seamless. It's absolutely, at this point, it might as well just be one integrated piece of G10 rather than a piece with an insert. I very much like that, and I expect the G10 insert models to be the same. All of the small hardware has got a standard black finish on it. It does have a sort of semi-glossy look to it, as the liners do as well. They are black finished. So you're blackety black on this, except for this Petrified Fish pivot cap here. Yeah. Fit and finish, guys. I can't argue with that. You've got a G10 backspacer here. You've got this big slot for a lanyard. I cannot really say anything bad about this knife. I can tell the difference between this, a $30 Petrified Fish, and a sort of a $70 or $80 Petrified Fish. I can tell the difference, but it's not a difference in quality. It's a difference in manufacturing choices. Okay, to make this a less expensive knife, you're not going to see these scales machined on the interior for recessed liners. You see the exposed liners, and that typically is a price point decision with these types of knives, as it eliminates the interior machining on the handle scales. Fit and finish, I can't argue with anything on that. Let's go and talk about action on this bearing pivot flipper knife. It has a very good crisp detent on it. You can hear that as I close it. Let's see here. Yeah, there you go. Sucks it right in, guys. This knife is nice and slender in the closed position. Pretty much sticking to that 33 millimeter width here. As the blade is mostly recessed in the closed position. You do have the added width of the flipper tab, but it's not a huge flipper tab, and it's really well designed with some decent jimping on the forward side of it. The geometry, the mechanical sort of I don't know how to describe this. I'm not an engineer, but the mechanical efficiency is what I'm thinking of here. The relationship between the center point of the flipper tab and the center point of the pivot combined with a nice detent in it makes for explosive opening action. The closing action is very good on this. I do feel a little bit of bearing roll. And that is going to be due to that surface finish here. As this wears in on the bearings, it will smooth out a little bit and get a little more of a hydraulic feeling rather than a roller feeling that it has now. But it is very smooth. The detent is dialed in well. It came out of the box perfectly centered, guys. I've not had to do anything with this knife. In fact, it still has. You can see it's still fairly wet. That is the factory oil on this. I have not disassembled this knife. I've not done anything with it. It didn't need anything out of the box. Guys, I just, it's hard to argue with what I've seen out of Petrified Fish, but the action is really, really good. The lockup is extremely solid. There's no movement, no sensation of movement here in the liner lock. You feel it on the inside of your finger here. If you start working on this blade, I cannot feel that moving at all. There's no lateral play at all. What you see there is actual flex in the blade where I'm putting pressure on it. And again, it's pretty doggone smooth, guys. So action is good. I mean, Petrified Fish is just doing such a solid product, and I can tell. I've had a few of their pieces go through here across a tabletop. They've all been pretty much perfectly manufactured with nearly perfect action. I just cannot argue with what this company is doing. I very much like their quality control standards. I would like to see the rejects coming out of this factory. I would bet they have decided to do a high reject number rather than let any problems get out to the market and ruin their reputation. I wish all brands thought that way. So as far as anything about the knife, the usability of the knife, the fit and finish of the knife, the action of the knife, I can't really say anything bad about it. And speaking of usability, let's look at this blade. This is a drop point. It is fairly aggressively dropped. You can see that center line of the tip falls right into the perceived center line of the knife itself. That makes the tip very controllable. I know where that is when I'm using it. Lots of workable cutting edge here. Let's bring in a comparison knife. We're going to show you the difference here. We've got the Paramilitary 2. There is quite a bit of a difference in these knives. Look at the difference in the blades on this knife. We're going to start at the termination of the edge here so we can sort of line these up. And you can see the difference in cutting edge length and blade length between these two knives. Let's go here and we're going to line up the forward edge of the handle scales and we'll take a look at that handle length. Damn near the exact same between those, but we're packing more blade length into this Petrified Fish than we are on the Paramilitary 2, which is not known. The Spyderco Paramilitary 2 is not known for handle to blade ratio, as it tends to be heavy on the handle side. So overall, I think we're doing pretty good on the design here. We're doing pretty good on the manufacturing. Materials are very much decent at the $30 to $35 price point. And again, another fine product from Petrified Fish. Look at this handle. I know you see some of this machining here, and the handle is a little bit on the thick side at 653 thousandths of an inch, or 16.5 millimeters. In the hand, it feels very tool-like. A lot of that thickness in the handle is just down this center ridge right here. Let's take a look down the length of this, and you can see this center ridge, this high point, is where I'm getting that 16 millimeter thickness. Now the rest of it, you can see it totally rolls off back towards the back of the handle. It is machined in on this inside edge, so it's not super thick in the hand, and it really doesn't feel as thick as it is. You know, it doesn't feel round in the hand. I can feel this pocket clip a little bit, but it's a pretty doggone good design. It's not too high off of the body, but it gives plenty of clearance. The tip is not too high or too low. I very much like when a tip is done this way, where it's flat on the same plane of the body of the clip. I think that makes for a fairly comfortable pocket clip. Rather than the type where it would come off of its touch point and then come back up and it doesn't flatten out. I don't like that type of clip as much. This one is pretty doggone good. It's narrow. It's not super long. You can see it's very well balanced as far as size to this knife. Yeah, I don't have any issues with that clip at all. Some of you guys may not like those sort of dome head screws on that, but that's what we've got to work with here. So that's what we've got to work with. Everything came out of the factory nice and tight. I typically, when I first take something out of the box, I get my driver set out and I check all the screws, because you would be amazed at the number of knives that I've gotten in hand that the screws were not snug down enough. And once you start opening and closing, carrying it, all that vibration, it will work a loose screw looser. And a loose screw that is looser is a lost screw. So I always check that stuff. And this knife came, everything was snug down. Like I say, I have not adjusted, disassembled, or anything on this knife. I did touch on the pivot just to see, once I started snugging down on it, just to see how tight it was to have this centering and this action. And you know what? It's not too bad. They did not have to fight any centering issues by over tightening this pivot. It could go way tighter. And it doesn't need to go any looser. This action is, it's pretty doggone decent, guys. Now, the one negative that I'm going to say about this knife before we get out of here is, in my eyes, it's not so much of a negative. But again, for the lightweight guys that like the lighter weight knives, you are not going to like this knife. At 5.8 ounces, it is going to be way too heavy for those guys that want to carry something like a bug out. If a Benchmade bug out is your perfect carry knife, this will be both too large, too heavy, and additionally probably too thick in the handles. But for those guys that prefer a little more substance, a little more perception of strength through the substance and the weight of the knife, they like a little bit thicker handle. Maybe they've got bigger hands and they want a little more tool-like feel. I think this is a very, very good choice. On top of that, it's just a good looking knife. It's amazing what you can get for $30 or $35. Petrified Fish is, damn it, this company is a winner. Of all of these Chinese, modern, high quality, technical Chinese knife companies, what I've seen out of Petrified Fish, it places them easily in the same quality range as companies like Usability, and Kaiser, and all of those knife brands that offer these sort of G10 D2 level knives. Bestech, well known for that, but a knife like this from Bestech would be about $50 or $52, where you're looking at $30 or $35 from Petrified Fish. Excellent, excellent deals to be found across this company's product line. I've been very impressed with them. There you go. I don't know what else can I talk about. Did I talk about how comfortable the handle is? I talked a little bit about it. I mean, you can look at the design there. It's a pretty decent design. Really, the only thing I'm personally I'm like, is this jimping. And you know what? When you make a design decision and you choose to place a swedge this far back on the blade, you know you're going to eat into the spine of the blade, and you're going to eat into accessible and usable areas for jimping. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed in that, but this swedge looks really, really good back there, and it gives you this geometric look. It gives you this rising look sort of for this slicer type of flat blade grind here. It's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. And if you don't care about the jimping, I mean, what is there is really good. The jimping, the quality of the jimping itself is good. It's just not very much of it. Other than that, I don't have anything bad to say about the knife. I think Petrified Fish, as I've already said, is a super quality company. And if you're interested in this knife, I don't see any reason not to buy it at the price point. So there you go. The Petrified Fish PF838, another super high quality, quote unquote, budget knife coming out of China. American companies, you need to be paying attention to this. American companies need to be paying attention to these Chinese companies, because they are kicking your ass at the under $100 price point, and that is the majority of sales in the cutlery world by a wide margin is under $100 price point, because the majority of normies out there outside of the knife enthusiast community will never spend more than $20 on a knife. I know that for a fact. I sold knives to tens of thousands of people in the world's largest knife store. I know this company is giving a lot, and there's not a lot of competition out there at this price point that is going to beat this knife if it fits within your parameters. So there you go. The Petrified Fish PF838 flipper folder. This one in the black G10 with carbon fiber insert. Yeah, this is not too bad at all. This is not too bad at all. I don't think I'm going to keep this knife. I think I'm going to roll this knife into the giveaway box and see if somebody can get lucky and get this in a giveaway. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.